We are learning absolutely disturbing new details about the deaths of 3 young girls and the man who authorities say is their prime suspect. We are talking about Travis Decker, the father accused of brutally killing his own daughters, and the shocking forensic evidence allegedly tying right back to him. I'm going to bring on a forensic death investigator and a former detective to get to the bottom of whether Decker will ever be found. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. On June 2nd, the bodies of Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia Decker, ages 9, 8, and 5, were found near the Rock Island campground out in Washington. Plastic bags over their heads. To be more precise, 2 of the victims had 2 separate bags over their heads, and the third had 3 separate bags over her head. Their wrists were zip-tied. This is all according to the sheriff's office in Chelan County in court documents. This is sick stuff. So now you're asking who could do this, right? Well, here's what happened next. This is what we're learning now from the sheriff's office. So autopsies were completed, and the medical examiner determined the cause of death for each victim was suffocation. The manner of death was homicide. And according to the sheriff's office, authorities submitted the cable ties and the plastic bags that were found at this crime scene to the Washington State Crime Lab for DNA analysis. That lab came back on August 6th with DNA profiles matching 32-year-old Travis Decker, a reported Army veteran with extensive training. Travis Decker is the girl's father. Let me say that again. The sheriff's office has come out and said that the lab reported DNA profiles matching Travis, the father, were found on the plastic bags that covered each of his daughter's heads, and aside from the girl's DNA, no other DNA profiles were obtained from the bags. And as for the cable ties, 1 DNA profile was obtained, and that was a match again to Travis Decker. No other DNA profiles on the cable ties. So therefore, the sheriff's office has concluded that he is the only suspect in these killings. Here's the problem. They don't know where he is. They haven't been able to find him for over 2 months. And here's what's even more alarming. Officials said Travis could be anywhere in this country. That through his training and experience, he could live in the wilderness for days or weeks on his own outside with no equipment. ABC News reporting that Travis was deployed in Afghanistan back in 2014 while on active duty in the Army. He was then transferred to the Washington National Guard in 2021. There were preparations for an administration separation that began in 2023-2024, but apparently the process hadn't really been started. That, by the way, is the official way that someone is terminated from active military service. So for now, the Chelan County Sheriff's Office is working with local, state, and federal law enforcement partners to try to find him. The United States Marshal Service has posted a reward of up to $20,000 for information leading to Travis Decker's arrest. In fact, here's what the Sheriff's Office said in their press release. The suspect should be considered armed and dangerous. If you see Travis Decker, please call 911 immediately and do not attempt to contact or approach him. Anyone with information is urged to contact the nearest U.S. Marshal's office, the U.S. Marshals Service Communications Center at 1-800-336-0102 or USMS Tips at usmarshals.gov/tips. And according to authorities, he is currently wanted for 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of kidnapping. And when it comes to finding out about a person's possible criminal history or other important background information, let me just say there's nothing better right now than TruthFinder. Yeah, Law&Crime, we partner with TruthFinder. We use it to get details on people involved in our stories, but even if you don't work in true crime, it can be an excellent resource to give you some peace of mind. Why? It's one of the largest public records search services in the United States, and with a paid subscription service, you can get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. And right now, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/LC Sidebar. Now, I'm going to get a little bit more into the details of Travis Decker's case and the past, but before I do, I want to analyze some parts of this, and then we're going to go through more. So let me bring on 2 experts in this area. I am joined by forensic death investigator from Jacksonville State University, Joseph Scott Morgan, host of the Body Bags podcast. Encourage everybody to go check that one out. And retired NYPD detective David Sarni, who's also an adjunct professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Thank you both so much for coming on. Joseph, I'll start with you. Talk to me about the brutality of that scene. What are the takeaways? I mean, does that method of killing these 3 young girls, does that suggest a particular type of assailant?
Yeah, I think that it does. And here's the most terrifying part about this uh, is that they would have struggled mightily. This is, we hear the term suffocation. This is truly in the purest form what's referred to as an oxygen deprivant event, where the individual, and it happens relatively quickly, uh, but they are struggling for life because they're rebreathing their own expelled air. So with the uptake, when you're blowing out your oxygen, or blowing out air, that air that you're blowing out is actually carbon dioxide. It's a painful death. Your brain is screaming for oxygen, these precious little angels that are there, and they have these bags over their head. There would have been struggle. We think about what it's like, when you're trying to breathe. And to add a layer to this, just follow me here. Most of the time, it's a natural response to put our hands up to our face, our throat, this sort of thing. Maybe in a primal sense, try to clear our airway. They're bound. Can't do that. They can't get any kind of relief at this point, because if they're zip tied, if their hands are zip tied, they can't manipulate anything. My suspicion is obviously that they were probably zip tied and then suffocated with these bags, maybe laying adjacent to one another. I don't know necessarily how the bags were secure. I think that's interesting.
And why multiple bags? As if it wasn't horrifying enough. Multiple bags?
Well, I think that maybe in his mind, if he did this, you're thinking about were these bags permeable in any way? He's trying to kind of cover all of his bases. So the more layers you have here, as far as these layers of bags, you are preventing any kind of leakage or expelling of the carbon dioxide. He has an understanding of this. And this is actually, be quite frank with you, this is a methodology of torture that has been utilized in a number of cases over the years, where people will have bags placed over their heads. They're brought to the point of passing out or death, and then the bag is removed. They start to rebreathe again. And so that part of it is particularly troubling, because if the dad did this, this is sadistic. I mean, at this point in time, it's not like, and forgive me, but it's not like, he took these children out and shot them in the back of the head, all right, and put the lights out immediately. It's not what happened here. This is grueling, all right, and they would have had an awareness, Jesse.
It is horrifying to be thinking about. Dave, before I go to you, real quick, Joseph, the DNA results, your thoughts on those? How accurate are those? Because also, let me couple with this, not only the DNA results on the cable ties and the bags, and your thoughts on how accurate that is, but in July, authorities announced that bloody handprints on the tailgate of this truck were found near the girls' bodies and apparently matched the DNA profile, quote, that we believe is Decker's. This is, again, according to the Chelan County Sheriff's Office. So talk to me about how accurate that data is.
Well, I think probably relative to the bags, I think at first blush, we might think that, well, this might be touch DNA, which, we lose thousands and thousands of skin cells constantly, and we're sloughing them. And those are only a partial of DNA. Okay. My thought is if he is engaged in this behavior, this is going to be very stressful. You've got kids that are already restrained, and I'm projecting here. I'm just kind of throwing this out there. He's having to fight with them. Well, one of the things that you think about is the deposition of DNA might be as you're grabbing the interior of the bag and then pulling it over their head. That might be sweat, all right, which is going to be a much more rich source. And again, speculative on my part. And then securing the bag and holding it around their neck, unless he took tape or some other, maybe another tie, to secure it that way. They're not saying that, though. So I really wonder if he's placing the bag over their head like this until they're suffocated. Again, that's gruesome, but you've got this direct contact here that's going to be rather robust, particularly if you've got perspiration involved, as opposed to just kind of passively skin cells dropping off.
Dave, let's talk about this search. How do you approach locating and apprehending a suspect with that background that I mentioned before?
Well, here's the issue again. We know this is, you have a point of where he was at. there was time and distance between when they discover the bodies and when he fled the scene. So now you're going to try to do a background history of him, trying to get an idea of where he may have been prior to, so he has some familiarity with the area, or a location where he was going. He left the car, he left his dog, so he had an intention. He already had some other idea of flight, because if you look at this, to do what he did, this is a planned murder of his children. That's really what it comes down to. This is not about psychopathy. It's not about this. If he's the one responsible, this is a planned murder, and there had to be some sort of planned escape. This isn't sort of a happenstance. So that's the reason. And then you're talking about the outdoors and the wilderness and the ability for law enforcement to track someone after that long period of time that he's been away. Not only that, with his possible plan, now you have to, put out this gigantic net and hope to bring it in. And what happens is, as this case has gone on, the resources, you had a lot more law enforcement personnel involved. Now the marshals are running the show, and it may have been scaled back for resources because of manpower. So now you have this guy has been leaving 2 months at this point, and that's why the sheriff, you could say, he could be anywhere, because they don't have, they don't know his exit strategy, and they haven't been able to find anyone who's found him.
Well, so the Chelan County Sheriff's Office confirmed to ABC News that cadaver dogs had been used. There were tracking dogs. They've looked at sightings, tips, leads. There has been nothing. There was an announcement last month that they may need to scale back the search since the leads have kind of dried up. There is a reduced footprint. There have been reported potential sightings. In July, the U.S. Marshal Service got a tip on July 5th that someone consistent with Travis's description was seen in the Bear Creek area of Sawtooth National Forest in Idaho, described by officials as a white male, anywhere from 5'8" tall to 5'10" tall, wearing a black mesh cap, black earrings, a cream-colored t-shirt, black shorts, low-top sneakers, a black Garmin-style watch, sporting a long ponytail, an overgrown beard, a mustache, was carrying a black JanSport backpack. In August, there was a potential sighting of Travis near this pass along the Pacific Crest Trail in Washington. This was according to the King County Sheriff's Office, and law enforcement looked into it, but Travis wasn't found. And the Kittitas County Sheriff Clay Myers said in a statement, "We can't and won't quit this search. Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia Decker deserve justice. Decker remains a danger to the public as long as he's at large." Dave, are you surprised he hasn't been located? If he is alive, how could he be surviving on his own?
And that's a question that I'm going to believe baffles the sheriff's office and most of law enforcement at this point, is how much did he have available? How much material did he have when he fled the location to sustain himself this long? This is almost like Rambo in a sense. He's just found his way to just put himself into the wilderness. And the problem is, again, technology isn't available to us to do anything more than have helicopters and drones, cadaver dogs and the like looking for him. There's no video cameras. There's nothing. He's not leaving some sort of footprint within social media or anything like that. So he, that's why when you see this, what the sheriff says is pretty accurate. We don't know where he is. And they're going to keep looking, but could he be dead? It's possible. Could he still be hiding somewhere else? It's possible. You do what you can. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. It's just the problem is now resources are limiting.
And Dave, on June 17th, officials, they released this a new suspect flyer of Decker, and it seemed to provide photos of what he may look like if he had changed up his appearance. At this point, I mean, obviously it hasn't helped. I mean, they haven't found him, but I thought that was interesting to try to give different ways for the public to see what he might look at. Is that common? Is that usually effective?
It can be effective. The good thing is, with anything social, like body marks, tattoos, certain unusual features of the person, you try to highlight and do those things, kind of like age regression, age progression. You're doing what you can. And the thing is, I know law enforcement is doing the best they can, and they're not just giving up on this. This is a suspected child murderer of his own children. They're doing their job, but this is something that unfortunately is difficult given the vast space in which he had to flee the location without technology available for law enforcement to exploit in this case.
Now, to give everyone kind of an example of what we're talking about, authorities, they searched the Blewett Pass area in the Wenatchee Mountains, but the sheriff's office said, quote, "The potential evidence and intelligence gathered in this area are inconclusive," meaning we cannot confirm any of the information is directly associated with Mr. Decker, so you're kind of getting a sense of the complications there. The Chelan County Sheriff, Mike Morrison, told ABC, "We could be in a fight for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I certainly hope we're looking at a couple weeks and it closes out, but it could be a long time, and we are committed to staying with it." And actually, it was interesting. On July 17th, there were videos that were released by police showing Travis 3 days before picking up his daughters. It's apparently of him in a parking lot of a grocery store in Wenatchee. This is, again, in Washington. This is after he allegedly rear-ended another person's car. He's seen talking to a police officer and the person whose car he hit. And I kind of want to lay out some of the timeline, too. So we go to May 30th, and according to Ariana Cozart, who is the attorney for the little girl's mother, Whitney Decker, Travis picked his daughters up at their house in Wenatchee Valley, about 50 or 60 miles from the campground. He allegedly talked to Whitney for 15 to 20 minutes, left with the girls, even apparently indicated that he would be back by 8 p.m. Whitney then calls police with a complaint saying she hadn't heard from Travis. He didn't bring their girls back home when he said he would. She called him multiple times. Calls went straight to voicemail. And according to court records, he, quote, reportedly has never done this before, and further noted he is currently experiencing some mental health issues. Now we go to the next day, May 31st, and police find out that Travis and the girls never made it to where they were planning on going, this apparent 5K running event. And this is interesting, that police indicated at the time that Travis was, quote, homeless and living in his vehicle or at various motels, hotels, or at campgrounds in the area. And despite all of this, authorities said the case didn't warrant an Amber Alert. They did issue an endangered missing person alert, not an Amber Alert. You know, the required criteria for an Amber Alert includes that there's a reasonable belief by law enforcement that an abduction has occurred and that the law enforcement agency believes that the child is in imminent danger of serious bodily injury or death. And once that's determined, then police notify broadcasters, state transportation officers. It alerts regular programming. It interrupts it. Radio, TV, there's highway signs, there's other digital platforms. But then you go to June 2nd, and authorities find Travis's car at 3 p.m. near the Rock Island campground, and that is when they find the girls' bodies, and the search for Travis is really on. And by the way, this area of Washington is in the Wenatchee River Ranger District. It's remote, it's mountainous, and encompasses approximately 696,000 acres. Joseph, back to you. Do you sense, as Dave was talking about, this element of premeditation, right? Assuming he did this, does the area where the girls are found, does that indicate something to you?
Yeah, well, familiarity. I mean, you just said that it's very remote. I got to tell you what this reminds me of. I was part of the investigation into the Olympic Park bombing back in '96 when I was with the ME in Atlanta, and for years, you know, they were looking for Eric Rudolph, and he turned up one day. A country deputy found him digging in a dumpster in the back of a 7-Eleven, trying to scrounge food. Now, he is an Army vet. It's part of the 82nd, if I remember, and they had all kinds of people, teams scouring, you know, that region in the Blue Ridge Mountains, that sort of thing, looking for him. I had friends that were injured at an abortion bombing, LEOs that were there because there was a secondary device that he had set off. So, I mean, I was invested in that case. I remember it distinctly, and it took a long time, but he was prepped, seriously prepped. And if this guy's got a military background, I don't know specifically what his Army MOS was, but if he has any kind of prepping mindset, he could have supplies laid in. You never know where he might have them rat-holed, sitting out there in the wilderness, an area that he's very familiar with. And he may have moved on at that point in time. Yeah. He can live off of the land, you know, by his wits, with his training, that sort of thing. But to the point made earlier, yeah, you show up with these kind of tools. What are you going to use multiple baggies for that they're a size that you can put over a person's head, and you're going to have zip ties, and they are specifically used as a mechanism to bring about the end of these precious babies at this point in time. So yeah, I think he was prepped, but I think he's probably prepped beyond that. And they're right to say this guy's armed and dangerous. There's no telling what he's capable of if he's still among the land of the living.
And let me talk about that for a second. So, right, this search is quite extensive. You have local officials, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, the U.S. Marshal's Office, Dave. Talk to me about two things here. A, And I'm not trying to cast blame. I'm just trying to understand, why is it being reported that there was no Amber Alert initially? And two, what happens if he's in Canada? Is there any way to get him back?
Well, that's obviously what I guarantee you. I think they've had work with the Canadian Mounties and outside law enforcement. There's nothing that we cannot extradite if he's apprehended in Canada and get him extradited back to the United States. There's no issue, I don't believe, with that. As far as the Amber Alert goes, when you do these protocols and procedures, they have to hit a certain criteria. Unfortunately, even with an Amber Alert, would it have mattered at that point? Because the murder took place in such a remote area. That was the thing. Would they have seen the car? At this point in time, with his fleeing the scene, some law enforcement officer, even if they didn't know about it, would have somehow said, I remember him being here. I recall him being there. That hasn't happened at all, because an Amber Alert is good, and I'll say in an urban setting, that where they're going or where they're coming from, and there's, again, technology out there, cameras and the like. This is a remote area where these murders took place, and the perpetrator who committed these murders, and it looks, we're going to have to assume at this point, but it looks like it's, Travis at this point. It's hard to find because he's been off the grid so long anyway. He's learned how to survive being off the grid. Don't worry about credit cards, cell phones, and the like. He left his dog, so he already decided, I'm going to go on this on my own. Bringing your dog and leaving your dog is something, he already had a determined fact he's leaving. So.
And by the way, Dave, on June 4th, during a news conference, Chelan County Sheriff Mike Morrison encouraged Decker to turn himself in.
Travis, if you're listening, this is your opportunity to turn yourself in. Do the right thing, do what you need to do, and take accountability for your actions. We're not going to go away, we're not going to rest, and we're going to make sure we find you. You will be brought to justice. Those young ladies deserve it.
Dave, is that effective? Assuming for a moment that Travis Decker is alive and sees that, is that plea from law enforcement, is that effective usually in these kinds of cases?
It's effective in the sense of showing that we're hunting for you. The hunt is on, and give yourself up before something else happens. That's what you're looking at. But is there going to be a sense of remorse from Travis at this point if he's the one that committed the murder and saying, I didn't do it? It would have happened already. So obviously we're looking at a person who does not want to be found for allegedly killing his children. So it's a plea. Hopefully someone, maybe he would have heard it, but he's been off the grid. So that's the other issue. Is he looking at TV or social media? Probably not.
And I want to get into mindset here with you, Joseph. So Cozart, again, the attorney for Whitney, this is Travis's ex-wife, told ABC News that Travis wasn't getting the mental health treatment that he needed, that he was suffering from PTSD. She added, quote, the courts didn't fail these girls. It wasn't the judge and it wasn't Whitney. It was our system. Whitney feels like the system really let Travis down. If somebody would have provided Travis with the help that he needed, those girls would be alive. And before the girls disappeared, Cozart said there were no red flags and that he loved those girls very much. ABC reporting that his PTSD was quite present during his marriage to Whitney. That's again according to Cozart. And Travis would allegedly scream in the middle of the night, only get 2 hours of sleep. He would soak the bed. Their marriage officially ended in 2023, and Whitney ended up being granted full custody. Petitioned the court to, quote, put restrictions in place on parenting due to concerning factors regarding Travis's mental health and stability. This is again according to Cozart. And she also relayed to ABC that Travis was granted visitation with the kids for 3 hours on Friday, 8 hours every other weekend. When you look at that background, Joseph, and I know that is important for a forensic death investigation, what do you take away from that?
Well, first off, Travis is a creature of free will. He made a decision to do this, if in fact he did it. All right. Now, as far as the PTSD goes, yeah, I mean, that's a very scary situation to be in. And I know that you're supposed to take it case by case. There are a lot of people walking around with PTSD that are veterans that have found the will to move forward. Now, I don't know what his situation was. I don't know if they don't have him on medication or therapy, and there's a lot of different therapies out there. But at the end of the day, if he did do this, it is he and he alone that did this. I mean, we can deflect and we can talk about, what part of the system failed. Well, the system's always failing. And you can't predict at any one time. There is no government agency out there that can predict what this guy is going to do. Now, he had focused himself to the point where he's going to get possession of these children for that period of time that he is allotted by the courts to go to this 5K event. He's going to show up prepared with what turns out to be, tools of death, if you want to. And he's got an area. Dave was talking about the remoteness of this. You don't wind up here by accident. You know what I'm saying? You don't wind up in this location. It's like, oh, wow, I'm at the end of the earth here. You have to have foreknowledge of this location. So he's able to focus on this. Now, I don't know if he's having some kind of delusions or something like that, but he could sure enough operate the vehicle to go pick up his kids, acquire the tools necessary, drive to that location, put them in restraints, and then put bags over their head so that they're deprived of oxygen. Now, that's a choice that he made. He did all of those things along the way. I don't know what her representative is getting at with this point. God bless her. I wish her the best in it. Right now, this is a triple homicide investigation relative to these precious girls.
And the evidence doesn't look good. Aside from the cable ties, the plastic bags, the sheriff's office confirmed they collected a large amount of evidence, including the suspect's personal items from the truck. In June, they indicated they were taking blood samples from the scene. Fingerprint analysis was also going to be conducted. His dog was found, taken to the Humane Society. There was digital evidence that Travis allegedly made internet searches 4 days before he picked up his daughters about moving to Canada. Dave, what do you take away from what this evidence suggests?
This and it goes back to the same thing I'm saying. This is a pre-planned murder of his kids. This is what he did. This is pre-planned. I tried to create a motive of escape. And here's the thing. He murdered his children, but left his dog alive. So you could see where his priorities are. And whatever the reason is behind the murder of his kids, the alleged murder of his kids, this is a person who has successfully evaded law enforcement for a few months at this point. So this is a person who isn't mentally damaged or anything like that. If he is no longer alive, that is one aspect, but it's been 2 months that they've been trying to do the best they can with the law enforcement. But you're taking away a person who's actually, knew what he was doing. That's it. And he knew how to escape it.
And I don't want to forget the victims in this case. So their mother, Whitney, described them as having, quote, warm and open hearts. She spoke at a memorial on June 20th as well. Take a listen.
I truly hope that the legacy of the girls' lives lives in everyone's heart forever. They were incredible.
And also, I'll tell you, there was a GoFundMe that was set up to support Whitney for legal costs and expenses. It has raised over $1.2 million. Unbelievable. Joseph Scott Morgan, Dave Sarni, thank you so much for both of you for taking the time to explain the intricacies of this investigation, what we should be thinking about, and we'll continue to follow it. Thank you both so much.
Thank you very much. Stay safe.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.